I'm Linda Fox. I'm in the PhocusWire studio and I'm with Julie Cheetham, and she is CEO of Travalyst. Welcome, Julie. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Linda.
So I want to start with kind of evolution in the discussion around sustainability in travel, because how do you feel the actual discussion has moved on?
I feel that whereas sustainability was a discussion that had much impetus sort of 5 years ago, and much of the industry was starting to align around it, we're now at an inflection point where things have changed somewhat. We have a geopolitical shift, and those headwinds are enormous. Mm-hmm. We also have technological advances that we didn't have even 2 years ago, and consumer behavior is changing.
Yeah.
And so sustainability conversations haven't disappeared. In fact, in Deloitte's C-suite sustainability report from last year, we see that commitment by the C-suite to sustainability is increasing, not decreasing. But the conversations are shifting to revenue generation and risk management and efficiency. And so direct bottom line conversations rather than the sort of climate action or DEI or sustainability for the greater good conversations that we were seeing before.
Okay. I want to come back on two areas you just mentioned there. One is that sort of idea of, polycrisis, you said geopolitical, but I mean, it's kind of everything, isn't it?
It's an everything crisis.
This is travel. We have to kind of work our way around everything. How has that, would you say, I guess somewhat put the conversation on the back burner? Because as you've just talked about bottom line conversations, if their actions aren't going to see that bottom line for some time to come, are they, are travel companies thinking, well, I'm just going to park this for a while?
Well, we're seeing the opposite actually, because for example, many hotel companies are now experiencing the effects of climate change through damage to their infrastructure, their buildings, through changes in booking habits, through seasonality being, affected. And so their bottom lines are being affected mm-hmm. by the climate crisis, by the fuel crisis that we're seeing now. And so whilst they may not call it sustainability, because perhaps some of the zeitgeist for that has gone underground a little bit, so to speak, the actions and the investment is certainly there to be able to manage the risks that are, coming to us from all these different crisis points.
Okay. I always think of you as sort of the data queen. You came from Weaver, which was your own startup, and now you're in Travalyst. So how and where is the data feeding into the discussion? Where is it making a real impact?
Well, data, first of all, is becoming far more explicit, and it's becoming far less fluffy. And the sort of, I call it at the moment, the death of estimation, right? And so whether you're speaking to a traveler or a destination or a policymaker or a business, they want transparency. They want data that is credible and compliant. Mm-hmm. And so because the travel sector is so fragmented, we have so many different verticals, and then within that, many businesses are independently owned. We don't have that single source of truth for our industry like right. some industries do.
Right.
And so where data plays a role is if we can ungate it and unblock it so that it's not all sitting behind paywalls, the most important information. If we can create a universal data set that everybody can learn from and work with, just the basic key indicators, that is really powerful in helping travelers to understand where the information is coming from that they're getting thrown at them by various booking systems or AI booking agents. That's not very transparent at the moment. Mm-hmm. And so data can help us to really, I suppose, unlock all of that and understand our impacts and make better decisions. Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing sort of real examples of data doing that, where it is transparent and consistent and, that critical element? Are you seeing an example of, or perhaps multiple examples of where it's really playing into decision-making and change?
Yeah, absolutely. So we see that where we are able to share credible data, travelers are responding. So two examples that spring to mind. The one is the travel impact model, which shares aviation footprint data that was developed by the Travelers Coalition with Google. That information has been put in front of more than 160 billion travel travel searches and travelers at this point. And so we're seeing that travelers are more inclined to choose the sustainable option if the routing and the price is similar. And then another great outcome that was highlighted in Booking.com's report that was released recently was that we've seen an increase in travelers booking rooms where there's a third-party sustainability certification, with over 1 million room nights booked with sustainability certifications last year alone.
Okay, so you are seeing kind of real, tangible results from the data being fed in. That's good to hear. You mentioned AI, and I wanted to ask you about the role of AI, because we know AI is great at crunching information. We know it's great at sort of coming up with summaries and outcomes and potential scenarios. But for you, if you can't access that critical data and the consistent data, is AI helping or kind of hindering?
So I think it's both. The one thing is we're already seeing the positive role that AI can play by taking travelers to lesser frequented, lesser known destinations, encouraging personalized itineraries, getting travelers to travel perhaps on the fringe of seasons. And also, I'm really excited about the possibilities of multimodal travel in AI, giving travelers easy access to lower impact ways of traveling, with an easy navigation, not having to try to piece that together themselves. So I think that AI can play a huge role in encouraging more responsible travel and better travel. On the flip side, AI can amalgamate, trillions of pieces of information, and the traveler or the destination is not sure where that information is coming from. Has it been scraped? Is it credible? Etc. And so I think that our coalition has a role to play. And we've recently kicked off an internal working group between all our partners on AI. Really important internal role to play to say what information can be trusted, because trust and transparency is going to be key here. The other thing is obviously the footprint of AI and data centers in and of itself,
of course,
which we need to lean into as an industry.
I wonder, I sit now every day, using AI myself, encouraging my team to use AI, and I have to wonder if the tokenization side of it, the economics around it, will start to sort of bite back, and that will make people think about that whole sustainability thing as well, because again, it could be cost, it could be bottom line, and
absolutely,
we can't waste tokens. So
and you do see that. I mean, regardless of what's, I think, happening geopolitically or economically, ultimately we do end up acting in the best interests of our businesses, right? And so those unit economics come into play.
Yeah. So interesting that you mentioned the trust and transparency there, because my impression from the last couple of years with that, sort of even besides AI, was that there were so many programs and initiatives and certifications out there that already it was hard for consumers to figure out. And, they didn't know when a trip was sustainable, whether a hotel was really sustainable, whether those measured really, were carried through to the final stages. So is that still the case? Are they becoming more fit for purpose? What's the sort of situation there?
We're seeing an improvement there and a convergence in the industry, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And it is a complex landscape. Travelers can be confused by it. With the EU's regulation that is helping to reshape minimum requirements for certifications, we're helping the industry get really clear on what is going to be a compliant manner in communicating with consumers and what isn't. And so our coalition has done a lot of work together to create an opportunity for certifications to understand the incoming EU regulations, empowering consumers for the green transition, and then to declare themselves compliant or not.
Okay.
And so that means that booking platforms, travelers, and businesses can all understand, is this a compliant certification that's credible, or is it not? And so that will help the conundrum of, what is this green label?
Yeah, because I spoke to a couple of your colleagues on this earlier this year, and their feeling was very much that this piece of legislation could actually become almost a global benchmark for, this whole area going forward. What, are you thinking along the same lines?
I completely agree. I mean, first, because often when Europe does create a regulation, it is forward thinking and the rest of the world takes from that and eventually follows. But also the basic principles are really robust, third party audited, is always better than marking your own homework.
Yeah.
And so I think, it is a really sound way of proceeding.
Okay, so, if we don't continue to act, if we don't continue to bring the discussion forward, what happens? Is regulation the sort of the definite outcome? Are there other measures? I mean, you did mention dispersal earlier on and how AI could help with that. What do you think will happen there?
Look, I think that regulation will ultimately force everybody to become more sustainable. And I think we've traditionally had these two sort of pots of dealing with sustainability. One has been consumer facing, and it's been a little bit fuzzy and fluffy and more in the control of the marketing and brands and PR teams. And the other has been disclosures, which are very, finance quality, high quality disclosures that are third party audited. And I think that's converging rapidly. And thanks to technology, I think we won't see that difference anymore. And so with regulation and with better and more transparent data and credibility, I think we'll move quite quickly into this space. I can't see that within the next 5 years it will still be an option.
Yeah. So when I was talking to our friends at Travel Forward recently, they were saying that there are some really good initiatives that are public-private partnerships. So it's sort of like it feels like a more gentle way of regulating the industry. It's like, okay, what can we do to encourage people to, I think it was the Canary Islands or Gran Canaria, and get the businesses to behave in a more sustainable way, but again, show that bottom line. So are you seeing any similar initiatives?
Well, I mean, Turkey is the famous one that's sort of gone really all in with their GSTC regulation for their industry. And that's been fantastic in terms of the volume of certified hospitality businesses. But I think more broadly, public-private partnerships are working together where the private sector is helping to support government in terms of resources, campaigns, communications, understanding the benefits of doing this, not just for the business, but for the traveler and the destination. And so that is definitely the way forward. None of us can solve this problem on our own, which is why working in a coalition or a partnership is really the way forward. Yeah,
those sort of shared common interests, right? Our own Phocuswright research has showed time and time again that kind of say-do gap. Yes, I'll behave more sustainably, but actually when it comes to it, I won't necessarily pay for it or pay for the extra. Or the fee or whatever it happens to be. How do we tackle that? Is it education? What is it?
So we do see some evidence that it is closing and that we're starting to get activity in line with intention. Booking.com's latest research, one of our coalition partners, says that 85% of travelers will choose more sustainable travel and have said that it's important or very important to them. But where we see this most, and this is coming out of Expedia's latest, Expedia Group's new study, is particularly amongst younger generations. So in their latest report, Travel with a Purpose, Gen Z and millennials are redefining travel. They are not choosing over-touristed areas. They're consciously avoiding areas where communities have said, whether that's on social media or elsewhere publicly, that they have a problem with travel and tourism. And so 91% of Gen Z travelers last year said that environmental or social concerns would affect their travel choices. And 94% of Gen Z and millennial travelers will be willing to travel off-peak. So we're already seeing, I think, with younger travelers that this is happening in practice.
And how do you think that will balance with the kind of, I guess, the Instagram generation who must have that shot of the Venice Canal in that corner? We've all been there, done that. How will those two sort of balance?
We're seeing the folks who actually live in Venice fight back against the Instagram, and so I think that's interesting because we actually earlier this year at ITB, I watched a really interesting panel about public sentiment tracking. And that equilibrium is sort of finding itself thanks to social media. And so I think you still want your Instagrammable moments, but people are becoming more aware of what that Instagrammable moment means for the local who's trying to just get to work or take their kids to school, etc., or find a place to rent. And so the conversation has moved into the mainstream, which is really helpful. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about you in the CEO role for a couple of minutes. So what have your challenges been? You've been 6 months in, 8 months in?
Yeah.
So what have the kind of the highs and the lows been?
The highs are getting to work with just the most unbelievable coalition of partners. You know, you couldn't dream of sitting at a table with all of these folks at any time in my career previously. And, you know, we're doing such incredible things, bringing data to the mainstream now, building on the back of the TIM. We have rail data coming out in the next quarter. We've already helped with sustainability certifications. Accommodation footprint data has also been released. So it's moving really fast, and it's just the most wonderful team and wonderful coalition. The challenge is that to move an entire industry, particularly in a collaborative manner, is often incremental.
Yeah.
And technology isn't allowing us the luxury of that pace at the moment. So negotiating with private sector partners, regulators, industry bodies, and trying to keep up with the pace of technology to keep what we all do credible and aligned is very challenging.
So I sometimes quite, you know, I look at the world and, as I said before, polycrisis, and I sometimes get kind of down about it. And then I speak to someone like you and I find it really inspiring, all the work you're doing. So, you know, what keeps you, you know, getting up in the morning and going to work and tackling this immeasurable issue?
Linda, I'm South African, and I think I grew up under apartheid. You know, Nelson Mandela was released when I was still in high school. I was just not old enough. I was 17 and a half at our first election, so I couldn't vote for him. But you can't have that kind of environment around you and not grow up passionate about something. And so for me, it was human rights, which then turned very much into human and environmental rights because they're so interconnected, right? Yeah. So this is, I guess, just something that is so important to me. I can't get out of bed in the morning and just get through my day without thinking, what have I done to make it better? Okay. And, you know, that's just who I am. But also I live in the most beautiful country on the most beautiful continent, and I'm surrounded by nature. And I've been involved in travel and tourism for many years now, and I see it destroyed frequently. And so I think that it's a real privilege to be part of a team that's trying to do something about that. Yeah.
So if you weren't doing this, have you thought what you might be doing?
I think in another life I might be a human rights lawyer, but I don't presume to be arrogant enough to say that I'd be particularly good at that. But, you know, just what people do to each other. It's just, yes. But I'll, with our team, I'm amazing partners and secretariat will focus on what we can, you know, what we can influence.
Yeah. Great discussion. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. So lovely to see you.